Well, all right, we're about a minute or two away. We're going to go ahead and get started here in a second. Thank you all for being here today. We'll give it one more minute and let the live stream get up and running, and then we'll get going. Hey, Ron. Hey, Ron.
Hello.
Glad you can hear us. Hey, Rick. Good to see you.
Yep.
Hello, everybody.
Rick, you doing all right? Busy as ever, I'm sure.
Woo. Drinking from a fire hose.
Well, I'm sure it'll be great regardless. Thank you for being on and taking the time. I do appreciate that.
Hey,
Sir.
Rick, do you have access to your email at this time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and forward you an attachment. I didn't send it to you. I didn't think you were gonna be able to make it with the races.
Oh, ye of little faith.
All right, we'll make sure that Ron has the information and Rick has the info. Okay. Okay. Let me know and then we can call it to order.
Rick, I just sent that. Would you confirm when you receive it?
Yes, ma'am. I got it.
Thank you, Rick. Zach,
Thanks,
is
Rick.
that you on the iPhone?
I'm here.
Fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, iPhone, also known as Zach. Thanks for being here. All right, I have 2:01, so we're starting late. But we'll go ahead and call this meeting of the Planning Commission, the special meeting, to order for the special meeting today. Stephanie, why don't we go ahead and do a roll call?
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Here.
Commissioner Hall? Here. Commissioner McLean?
Here.
Commissioner Richardson?
Here.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Here.
Commissioner Williams? Also present is Zach, village attorney, Stephanie and Samantha for village staff, along with Ron Senna, and you do have a quorum.
Great, thank you, Stephanie. Okay, at this time, I would ask anyone on the board to declare any conflicts of interest for these items that we have on the agenda today.
I have none.
Seeing none, hearing none, we'll move forward. Stephanie, can you certify that we're in compliance with Resolution 2023-01?
I do certify that the meeting was posted in accordance with Resolution 2023-01 and 5440 of the municipal code.
Great, thank you. So we're in compliance with the resolutions as stated. We'll move to the approval of the agenda. Any discussion on the agenda that we have today before us?
Mr. Chairman, action item 4A, we no longer need to hear that. We have, since the publishing of the agenda, found a simpler solution. So if we could only take action on item 4B.
Great. Thank you, Samantha. I believe I would need a motion to amend the agenda, so I would entertain a motion unless there's other discussion or a disagreement with staff's recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we not act upon or work upon 4A of the special meeting agenda regarding ordinance amendments to Chapter 54 Land Use, Article 2 Zoning, Division 3 District Regulations, Section 54-92, R1 Single Family Residential District.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to strike 4A of the agenda today, and due to not being relevant. Let's go to a roll call vote. Stephanie?
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner McLean?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Absolutely aye.
Motion carries with the removal of item 4A.
Great. So at this time, we just have what was formerly 4B on the agenda today. Are there any other additions to the meeting agenda for today? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. So if somebody would be interested in approving the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the agenda for Friday, May 12th, 2023 special meeting of Planning and Zoning.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Stephanie, should we go to a roll call?
Commissioner Bach?
Aye.
Commissioner Myers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner Michelina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Great. So we have our agenda approved. We're moving into the next bullet point within this meeting, which is our public hearing. During the public hearing, members that wish to speak or give their input on the agenda items may do so. We're going to start with a presentation from the staff outlining what we're trying to cover today. There might be some questions from the commissioners to staff, and then at that time, I'll open up to public hearing. When we do the public hearing, if you don't mind coming down to the front, raising your hand, swearing to tell the truth on the testimony that you're going to give or the input that you're going to give, and then we'll hear your public input. So, great. So I guess it's A now, ordinance amendments to Chapter 54, Land Use Article Zoning, the short-term rental overlay zone. Sam, do you mind giving the commission some information on the proposed changes?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. This amendment to our short-term rental, section 54106, I'll draw your attention to C7. We have amended the short-term rental definition to now mean a dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit, including either a single-family detached or multiple family attached unit rented for the purpose of overnight lodging for a period of not less than one night nor more than 29 consecutive days to the same person or persons. We amended this following direction from the governing body at their regular April meeting. They heard testimony from some of their constituents that were requesting this change. And since it is a policy decision, we're bringing it the first reading to you all for recommendations on amending the ordinance to read as such. As you can tell, it would allow for single-family residents to only rent a portion of their home, not necessarily the full home that was required in the past. And so we're here to take any recommendations from you all back to the governing body for their next regular meeting.
Where was that again in,
It's on page 2, and it's number 7,
And
about a fourth of the way down.
the new attachment was.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Don't pay attention to anything that's in your packet. This is a supplemental, the one that's stapled. Sorry about that, Commissioner.
And
okay, now I see it.
Sam, just for clarification, we are enabled to approve recommendation to the governing body or disapprove recommendation to the governing body for these changes, right? Those are,
Yes, or if there's a recommendation that staff has not thought of that you all would like included, we're here to take any recommendations from you all on this change, and we'll bring it forward to the next meeting.
great, great. Any questions from the commission for staff before we open it up to public hearing?
Yes. When you're looking at now a portion of a dwelling unit, I understand it's a request, but do we have the statistics for what percent occupancy all the hotels are in town? Because you're basically creating a hotel by renting a single room in a residential area.
I'm not sure what their occupancy levels are on a regular basis.
Okay. Well, and the other thing too, I share my experience with what will happen with this is what I saw in Tucson when I was in the mineral show in February. I rented a room from an owner, a 5-bedroom house. It was, I was one of 5 different people there. The owner was not there. There was only parking for 2 cars in the driveway. Needless to say, all the other cars were parked all through the neighborhood. That did not go well with the residents that are there. So there's full house rental, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You're creating something. It's also short-term, which, again, you'll get more places than where your long-term rental is gonna go. Where, that's creating a problem that
Yeah.
I don't think exists unless you can show me the data on the occupancy for the hotels in the village.
Yeah, and thank you for those comments, Commissioner. I would request that we just focus on questions for the staff right now, and then we can do discussion after we open the public hearing. If that's okay. Any other questions for staff? Okay, at this time, we'll open up the public hearing. It looks like we have 2 individuals here in the room. Does anybody online that's would like to speak on this item? Just so that way we know how many folks might comment. I know that there's it looks like one other person online, but, okay. We'll give them the chance to jump in later. Name, and then just swear to tell the truth, or,
Okay.
Yep.
My name is Kelly Smith. I'm a resident of Ruidoso, and I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth.
Thank you.
I'd like to address Mr. Hall's concerns about hotel occupancy, and I understand what you're saying, but I see it as it's capitalism, that everybody has a chance to compete, that you have one-room log cabins here that are very traditional that people love to stay in. People our age love to stay in a hotel, but I have a 30-year-old daughter, and they are all about Airbnbs and staying in a home. And so I don't think in my opinion, as a resident that would like to rent a portion of my home, I don't think it's fair to say that only if the hotels are 100% full, then I have the opportunity to have that same type of competition to provide something different. In a neighborhood, it's just a whole different experience. And I know younger people are more into the experiences than somebody like me that's into how much does it cost. And then secondly, with your Tucson experience that you talked about, I too have stayed in a place in San Antonio where there were 4 rooms and each one was rented and we shared the common space of the kitchen and living room. That is not what, I personally am going to do. It's renting a room downstairs with a bathroom. They don't have access to the kitchen or any part of the house living area that we occupy. And to address the car limits that you were talking about, I know that the village has already made very explicit guidelines about how many cars per I think it's 1 car per sleeping unit or per room, so it would be like in my condition, I have 1 room with a bathroom that has a separate entrance, and only 1 car would be allowed. And by the way, we have enough space in our driveway to have 6 cars, so there wouldn't be anybody parking on the street at all. So that, and as well as something that we've talked about before with the council and with the village staff too, is that at earlier point in time, they were saying that if you rented part of your room, you had to leave your residence. I think that was kind of a conflict of whether it suddenly became a 2-family dwelling if there was somebody renting a portion of your house. And my contention, or my support of that was, if we live in our home, our full-time residence, then we are there to make sure the rules are followed, that there aren't 6 cars there, that they aren't building fires in a fire pit, that when there's fire restrictions, that they aren't violating the noise ordinances of the village council, so that if we are there, in the upstairs and they're there in the downstairs with a separate unit, we have control over, the behavior and the conditions that are being conducted in our personal home, as opposed to if it's a long-term, a full house, short-term rental, and the people live in Texas and they have a manager here. Well, most time those problems are called in and it's too little too late because they're trying to get a hold of the people where we're on site and would be there, every time. We wouldn't rent it unless we were there. So I hope I addressed some of the concerns that Mr. Hall brought up, and just feel like, it's kind of the capitalism deal that, we have to compete with the hotels and motels and the cabins that have been here forever, and we all have a place in here and have the opportunity to compete for people's business. And I know last month at the council meeting, a woman that owns some of those cabins said, I've been here since the 1940s and I deserve my fair share of the pie. And I understand her feelings, but I don't think that in the way things work in our economy is that you get your fair share, I get mine. We have to compete for it. And some people like staying in the nostalgic cabins that they stayed in when they were a little kid, and some people like staying in a home that is in a neighborhood and they feel safer, and other people like staying in a hotel. So, I think we're as a small village that depends on tourism, we're offering all those amenities. We offer the hotel motel, we offer the cabin experience, we offer the whole house short-term rental, and I think partial home rental is definitely another piece of that pie that, offers more people to come visit and, have another option of where to stay.
Great. Thank you for your comments.
Yes, thank you for listening. I appreciate
Of
your
course.
time.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Do you mind just raising your hand, saying your name? Thank you.
Dawn McGlasson, here to state truth. I just have a question on it's page 2 of 6 of the new considerations for ordinance. I'm not understanding number 8 there, where it talks about either sanitation or kitchen facilities, but not both.
Yeah, great question. Samantha, do you mind taking that? Or perhaps we can get Zach to comment on it?
Which number is it? I'm sorry.
8.
8. So I believe it says permanent provisions for living, eating, and either sanitation or kitchen facilities, but not both, under the International Building Code.
The way it reads to me is you can have a bedroom, but not a bathroom.
And I believe we pull that
You can have a
language?
kitchen then.
This is a, yeah.
That is that.
Eating facilities, which probably means
Yeah,
coffee
Stephanie,
pot
so
and
sorry.
microwave.
Let's hear from Stephanie.
The clarification for that is, per the IBCs, it specifies how a dwelling and a bedroom are separated. A sleeping area cannot be located in a kitchen or a restroom.
And Stephanie, another point of clarification on that thread. We got that language directly from the International Building Code, correct?
And it's existing. The only addition would be the underline bold in 7. But yes, that makes sense.
But when I read it, I took it the same way you did.
It makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's
That
a
was
little
my
bit,
question.
Great.
wording
Any
needs
other
to be-
comments?
I'm here in support of being able to rent a portion of your home as an Airbnb, when I travel, that's what I do, and I just think it's, personal freedom. It's part of Airbnb's rules, and people that rent a portion of their home are not taken away from any affordable housing, for people in the community. It's not like we're taking a whole residence and renting our whole residence, and then people who live here can't find affordable housing.
Disagreement with that? Okay, public hearing is now closed, and we'll move into discussion from the board and commission. And before I open it up to everybody, Commissioner Hall, thank you for your earlier comments about the parking concern, as you mentioned. So I'll open it up to all commissioners now for comments, questions for staff, if we have any thoughts on this amendment.
Sam?
Commissioner Richardson.
Yes,
Yep.
sir, sorry.
No problem.
So, I'm with Commissioner Hall over there on the parking situation. I mean, this would work well as if you were on Hull or Country Club or somewhere, but when we get up into Upper Canyon, I mean, there's hardly any parking for the houses that are there now. They're small. I'm just wondering how, if we do pass this, if we do permit this, is it going to be in the permit process, or are we going to have to go out there and physically look at the residents first to make sure they do have enough parking for the extra rooms? I just want to make sure that we're covered, so our police department is not overtaxed for all these phone calls that are going to be coming because of all the extra parking on the side of the road and people's yards and whatever. I mean, I'm for it. I'm just making sure that we don't overtax the police department because they've got other things to do. I mean,
This will create a challenge for our code enforcement because it won't be easy to identify if the vehicle that is street parked is the owner of the residence or the short-term rental tenant. And so we would require in the permitting process that they have say they're renting 2 bedrooms, they'll have 2 off-street parking spaces available for the tenants. But as it is now, homeowners can park in the village right-of-way, so that'll make it difficult to identify. But based on their permit, we can see if they're being a nuisance or causing congestion.
Okay.
But it will make enforcement difficult. They'll have to assess how they enforce.
Sorry. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Sam, follow-up question on that. When they go through the permitting process for a short-term rental now, do they have to provide physical evidence that they have off-street parking?
Yes.
Okay, and that's a
During the-
photo, or is that just a drawn?
Oh, we actually in-person inspect each of them.
Okay,
So they'll make sure that there's the proper off-street parking spaces per the number of bedrooms being rented.
thanks, Sam. Commissioner Byers?
I've had a lot of experience just because the complexion of my neighborhood has just changed over the past several years because of all the nightly rentals. And I watch units or houses that are inundated with, half a dozen cars sometimes, and the partying and whatnot that goes on. And as the lady stated, I think that I'd almost rather see everybody have a owner on site to help police all that kind of action. And I think it would be less intrusive to the neighbors, and they'd be more apt to control the parking situation and the noise and all that kind of stuff, and than the ones that are just, free reign, and because it is not fun, I can tell you. I'm surrounded by them nowadays.
Even if the owner isn't on site, they should be within a certain 100 feet of that building that they're renting for short-term. And that would help keep this under control. Currently, managers take care of most of them, and they take care of hundreds and hundreds at a time. And I don't see that that's good, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, thanks for your comments, Commissioner. Commissioner Hall?
To the commissioner's comment about the noise in the ordinance, I noticed in the ordinance, they have the quiet time between 11 PM and 8 AM. Can that be changed? I mean, I live in a residential neighborhood with families, got a lot of kids that go to grade schools. I don't think parents should have to deal with disturbances at 11 AM when their kids got to go to school, or if you happen to have a spouse that has to work early, 11 PM is just too late for that.
Yeah.
'Cause
I agree.
I agree.
In the
Like
hours,
8:30.
perhaps it could be modified such that, Sunday through Thursday, the, last hour for partying would be 10 or 9, and then Friday, Saturday, or holidays, 11.
So I'll ask the commission, that we are within our right to add or subtract whatever we want from this ordinance that's in front of us, which is the short-term rental ordinance overall, not just that one line. So if that is something that we would want to address, we are within our scope to address that. What I would ask is that we can solidify the dwelling unit and a portion of the dwelling unit before we expand to other parts of this document. That would be my only request for the commission. So I think that's valid, and that is something that we are within the scope of today to talk about.
I have a lot of questions
Okay. About the dwelling unit?
about the short-term rental
Okay.
ordinances.
Okay. Yeah. Let's get some more comments about the dwelling unit and maybe solidify a vote on that as a board. And then we can go to other questions for Sam and Stephanie on the short-term rental. So, John?
I had a couple of questions.
Yep.
And I know we're talking about the owners being on site. How do we enforce that? How do we make sure that's even done?
That's right.
That's a good question. I'm not sure there's a mechanism to enforce that today. My question would be, how's it any different than a full rental? You know what I mean?
That's what it becomes.
Right. And the permitting process is the same way, whether it's in part of a unit or a full unit, if you will, dwelling unit. So I think it's just amending that language. I don't think the process of short-term rental, changes. So right now, we don't require any owner to be in village limits. We don't require them to be professionally managed.
They are required to either have a property manager or a contact person that's able to respond within a specified time.
Great clarification. Thanks,
I think
Stephanie.
it's 2 hours.
Okay, that's good to know.
And then Commissioner Michelina, this amendment is only changing where a portion of the home could be rented. So the actual property owner or a long-term renter doesn't need to be at the home. They could have an exterior entrance that, say, had a keypad entry, and that's how they'd gain access to the rental. So it's just allowing for a portion.
Okay.
Does the ordinance specify it has to be a separate entrance if the owner isn't there? So there's no way to enforce that either?
No.
Okay.
And it doesn't really matter what zone they're in. It could be R1, R2. It doesn't matter, correct?
Correct.
Good, you?
Hey, Rick. Yep, thank you. It looks like Rick had to step away just for a moment, Stephanie, if we needed to note that in the
No,
minutes.
we still have a quorum.
Okay, great. Other comments from the commissioners on the dwelling unit? I'm happy to provide my 2 cents. The way that we are doing it now without changing, like the original scope I had many questions with, but this scope, changing it dwelling unit or portion thereof, I think it would make sense to allow it just from the standpoint of we don't prevent people from renting out a bedroom in their house for more than 30 days. We have all of the other issues addressed with a short-term rental, and this is a smaller version of that. So I don't know if I'm necessarily opposed. I was concerned about parking, but the parking process is the same as our short-term rentals overall. That was my main concern with this item. So I don't have any other comments besides that.
Yeah, my only other comment is this is an overlay district, and it's primarily residential. And I'm a resident, and I've got, similar to Commission's issue, I've got probably half a dozen short-term rentals within spitting distance of the house. And I understand renting out the house, but as I said, when you get to that point of now renting out individual rooms, you're going to create more traffic, you're going to create more problems. There are kids in the neighborhood. I think, as I said, the primary use, remember, it's residential zoning. It's not commercial zoning. That's my 2 cents. Something to think about.
Yep.
I don't understand lodging house. This was originally proposed to be in an R1 as a second home on the lot, and yet at 10 guest rooms. The extra home can have 10 bedrooms.
And I think,
That's
and
not
just,
how that was.
yeah, I think the lodging house definition, I've heard it referred to as a bunkhouse, boarding house. And that's already in our definitions today, correct, Stephanie?
Yes.
So of the generally definitions that we were provided, lodging house is already within our code as a building with 2 or more guest rooms, essentially. So that, I don't know necessarily applies to the short-term rental because they specify dwelling unit, which above dwelling means a building, portion thereof for residential occupancy, single, 2-family, multifamily, and rentals, but not including hotels, motels, or tourist homes.
I counter that if you have 10 bedrooms, you are a mini hotel. And imagine
Certainly
what that
fair.
would do to the area.
Certainly fair. I mean, there is a possibility, and it's well within our scope, to limit the number of rooms of a portion of a property that could be rented out. There is a question of how we would enforce that. I mean, we do look at listings, but that is within our rights to say it is, if it becomes a lodging house, right? If it's 3 or more rooms that they're renting out individually, then it becomes a lodging house, and that's not allowed.
Yeah, I agree. If it's over 2, it's or over 3 or more.
But actually, and maybe this is for Zach, or maybe this is for Sam, with the definition of a lodging house right now, it says more than 2. So if it's owner occupied and they're renting out a single bedroom, it wouldn't fall under the lodging house definition. Right?
No. And currently, lodging house isn't a permitted use in the R1.
Right. And Zach, any comment on that?
No, I agree with your interpretation.
Okay. So I think, Commissioner Williams, that the lodging house definition and specifying dwelling unit in this change addresses your concern about renting so many rooms, because it's already limited to 1, in my opinion.
Is it limited to 1?
No,
It's not. The language isn't explicit.
it's not.
No, this change in the ordinance would afford them to, say you have a 5-bedroom house, to rent it out to 5 different tenants, like 5 different bookings, you could potentially.
I don't know if I agree with that interpretation of the language.
That's part of the problem with some of this, is the
No, I'm not the
wording
attorney.
is not appropriate.
I interpret this, a dwelling unit, right? It says up above, not to be included hotels, motels, tourist homes. I mean, maybe we add lodging house. I don't know if the definitions are in scope for our conversation today. We can always,
You were looking to add lodging house into an R1.
no, sorry. Where the definition says for a dwelling means a building, family, portion thereof, et cetera, but not including hotels, motels, or tourist homes. And my statement to say would be, or lodging houses. So then if you have more than 1 room or portion of a dwelling unit being rented out, it becomes a lodging house.
This is more than 2.
At one time.
Yeah, in general. I think,
They can have 2, they can't
I
have
think,
3.
I think it
right,
needs
2
to
or
be-
more.
Like to do.
No, I would like to just keep it at 1, and I think within the interpretation of the language now, we are at 1, because if there's 2 or more, it becomes a lodging house.
Zach?
Well, that would be
So-
a question for Zach.
When I said I agreed with the chairman's interpretation, I agreed with his interpretation of the definition of, I think it was boarding house or lodging house, that said more than 2 makes it that thing. And if you're only renting out 1, then you're not turning it into that thing, whether it's lodging house or boarding house. But I also agree that the way that the draft language in front of you, short-term residential means a dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit, it kind of leaves it wide open to how many rooms you can rent out. So if I get the sense that the board wants to limit it somehow so that a house with 10 rooms can't rent out all 10 rooms. The owner family that lives there can rent out 1 or 2 or whatever the desire of the board is,
I
but
mean, really, if
is
they
that the
have 10
sense?
rooms, they don't need the money.
Yes, yeah. Zach, there were nods collectively from the commission when you said we want to limit it to, I think, no more than 1. So I'm getting,
Yeah.
and I don't know what the language would look like for that. I mean,
So more than 2, or no.
Am I
more
getting
than
the,
2
am
or
I getting the
more
correct,
Makes it a lodge house?
yeah, 1 second, Commissioner Williams, sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Zach.
am I understanding the will of the board at this point? I mean, is it a desire or to make the change so that a property owner could rent?
We're losing you.
And still want to tear house if it's a bigger house.
Right. We lost
sorry?
you portion,
Okay.
part of the way. I think it's the intent and the will of the commission to have language that would allow for a portion, but not where we're renting out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rooms or more.
And you specifically said 2 rooms, which if we're to limit it to 1 room in a
Limit
dwelling
it to
house.
one.
Because if it's
Number
2,
one.
you've qualified then as a lodging house.
If you hit 2,
Yeah.
you're at a lodging
Not
house.
according to this
I
definition.
finally caught up with you on that point, yeah.
That can be changed.
Okay. All right, so I think we've verbally reached a consensus. Any other opposition to that language? Like, we don't have this specific language, but I think we have the intent, and maybe we can wordsmith it live with Zach. I want to open it up and make sure that everybody can give their 2 cents. If not, I would entertain some language that we can wordsmith.
I have a significant question, I think, in
Yeah.
that, well, first, I question the definition in short-term rental overlay zone of it being strictly non-commercial residential property. That's stated in here in several of the paragraphs as well as at the very end.
Yeah.
And yet, at some time in the future, there may be a reason or a necessity to put a limit on that, and a way to do it may come around. If you make that statement in here, then you've defined them already as non-commercial. You would have to fight to go back on that. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think I'm following.
The other thing is that you're saying it's not a business, and yet not only do they have to come in and get a license for rental, but they have to come in and get a business license.
Yeah. I
And
think
it's not a business.
I certainly agree that those 2 points should be discussed. So if you don't mind, can we put a pin in that? And let's talk about dwelling unit? And then we can come back to
Tell me to shut up.
I have 3 things. So the definition of business, residential overlay, and then the time of quiet hours, I think we want to readdress. So let's do dwelling unit. I think it's the intent and the will of the board to limit this to one dwelling unit or 1 bedroom within the dwelling unit. If there are 2 or more, it becomes a lodging house. And I know that we need specific language incorporated in here.
You want me to give it a shot?
That would be great.
Short-term residential rental means a dwelling unit or a portion of a dwelling unit not to exceed 1 bedroom.
Okay. So we have some amended language there. Any comments on that amended language from the board? Okay. Seeing no comments, I would entertain a vote to adopt that language. We aren't adopting the overall resolution at this time because there's other questions that are had. But for that language, for that specific portion of it, I would entertain a motion for the board to approve that.
Chairman, I move that the definition of dwelling be revised to correlate with what Zach has given us.
I think you can just say, I move to approve the language Zach was given. Yeah, that's.
Yeah,
okay.
great. I move to approve Zach's language.
Second.
I got a motion and a second for that particular language. It was Commissioner Richardson.
Hey,
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes,
Ho-
Zach.
Hold on, I've come up with something better, just because a portion of a dwelling unit, that could be a garage or something, but what if we say short-term residential rental means a dwelling unit or 1 bedroom within a dwelling unit? And I hope I didn't just muddy the waters.
So just to clarify, short-term residential means a dwelling unit or 1 bedroom within the dwelling unit,
Within a dwelling unit.
within a dwelling unit.
What do you think, Zach?
I think that limits it to either it's the dwelling unit, either it's the house or 1 room within the house. That is a short-term rental unit.
I agree with that.
Okay. So Robert's rules would state we do need to respond to the original language if we were being, and we have a motion and a second, so we do have to take action on the original language. We can do it as a roll call if we want to adopt the original language, which states dwelling unit or portion of a dwelling unit not to exceed 1 bedroom. That's the original language. We do have a recommended change from Zach that says a dwelling unit or one bedroom
In the unit.
within a unit. So it's a slightly different. So let's take a vote, and we can do it by roll call on the original language.
Vicky could also modify her
Okay.
motion
Amend your
to
motion.
go to Zach's new recommendation.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay. Zach, you'd like to amend your language?
I'd like to amend my motion to be revised to correlate with Zach's language.
Okay,
And a second.
okay. And we still have the second as needed. So Zach, just one last time, the language we're voting on, if you don't mind?
Sure. Hold on a second. Short-term residential rental means a dwelling unit or one bedroom within a dwelling unit. And then the rest remains the same.
Okay. All right, motion and second. Let's go to roll call vote.
Commissioner Baugh?
Aye.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner McElina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. So we've put a pin in that portion. I think we can talk about the,
One legal question
Yep.
about that is, does it mean that they can do one or the other, but not both? So they couldn't rent out a house and then to another person a bedroom, or is that potential in this?
When you obtain a permit, you do have to specify the number of bedrooms that you'll be renting. So it's either the whole house or just the one.
Okay.
and I imagine, this is an assumption, when we go through the application process, there will be now a box that says whole house or owner occupied, one
We can
bedroom
make
rental.
We'll have to make the permit adjustment, and then also the inspection.
Yeah,
The inspector will have to be aware that they're only inspecting one bedroom and then ensuring parking.
thank you. All right, so the other ones that the commission wanted to address were quiet hours, the definition of a business, and we might not get to the bottom of what a business is. And then the overlay where it says residential specifically, right? Those were the three?
There's another one, and that is that we suggest that if they're going to rent out their home, that they have renter's insurance. I do believe they should have proof of renter's insurance in order to get their permit.
Yeah, a COI on file with the village as part of the permit process.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Insurance, it wouldn't I don't believe it would necessarily be renter's insurance.
No, there's
That's what's
short-term-
stated.
There's specific
Yes.
short-term.
specific short-term
Yep.
rental insurance. that,
Yep.
You know, the number of carriers that carry that.
Thank you for educating me on that. Okay, let's start with what I think might be an easier discussion because it involves hard numbers rather than interpretation of the law, and talk quiet hours. I know that there was a couple of commissioners that wanted to speak about that. Right now, the hours, I think Commissioner Hall mentioned, were from 11 to 8,
8 to 11.
11 PM to 8 a.m. And it looks like that is within the Village of Redoso Municipal Code.
Yes, but this is an overlay, and you can specify the rules in the overlay, and they can be different because it's an overlay district, so.
Yeah.
Like I said before, I'd prefer to see it at 9, simply because I've got a spouse that works early, has to get up, and I've got
Well, and a
probably,
lot of the healthcare people
Yeah.
work nights and such.
well, and particularly the families with kids in the neighborhood, for me, I mean, I see them every day when I'm walking the dog.
Since we're making it
You know,
a
I don't know too
neighborhood
many
thing.
7, 8-year-olds that are allowed to be up to 11.
Yeah.
I know I wasn't, so.
Sorry, not to cut you off, Commissioner Hall. I would like to clarify with Zach, is Commissioner Hall's interpretation of an overlay zone correct? That we can change this even if it's in, not competition with, but different than the municipal code?
I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I'd like to, if Commissioner Hall could, maybe explain to me a little bit more about why he believes that to be the case. I just don't know. I'm I'm not prepared to answer that right now. If an overlay zone, if it's in contradiction to someplace else in the municipal code, well, can it contradict it? I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess before I pass it to Commissioner Hall, is that the quiet hours in the village, 11 to 8, or is that
That's
across
for the noise sections by the PD code.
by the PD code? Okay.
What's the PD code?
That is the 38,
38-31 is what it says. Ruidoso Village Municipal Code, Section 38-31.
it's unreasonable noise and nuisances, I believe is how it's titled.
Yeah, no, Zach, just to clarify that, it's not uncommon when you have an overlay zone. It's in addition to whatever the base zoning and base codes and all that are, and it's not unusual in other parts of the country to have different, slightly differing requirements in an overlay zone that are in addition to the normal zone. I mean, the short-term rental is an overlay zones, and that's something to the governing body. They can make a decision on that, but that would be my recommendation, because as said, it's primarily a residential area. It's not primarily a short-term rental area.
And Commissioner.
Yeah, and I totally get it. I totally get it in theory that would be the case, that the overlay zone could regulate it in a different way than the general code of ordinances regulates it. I just don't feel comfortable giving you an opinion unless I have seen where in the law it actually allows that. So I'll do the research between now and the council hearing.
Section 38-31, unreasonable noise doesn't have an actual specified hour of quiet hours. It just describes the excessive noise and what is considered to be unreasonable.
Okay. So if there's no hard number in that code, I feel like we can change the hard number that's in the overlay zone.
I would say you're correct,
I don't know.
but if Zach
Could
needs to
certainly
research
recommend
that.
it.
Yeah. Zach,
But let me run something by you.
Yep.
If you put it if you restrict the noise hours in the overlay zone, and my house that I don't rent out as a short-term rental is in the overlay zone, am I now subject to these new hours that you put on for short-term rentals?
Great question. My interpretation was it would be only for the short-term rentals that are registered with the village. And that was going to be my question, or line of pushback, if you will, is that how do we differentiate between short-term rentals versus a homeowner that's partying until midnight? It'd be very difficult for us to do.
And then from a regulatory standpoint or a police standpoint,
Yeah.
It's easy to foresee that I have a party till midnight and I'm out there having a good time with my friends, and then the cops come down and shut down the Airbnb next door for doing the exact same thing I'm doing,
Right.
just from a PR perspective.
That's why they didn't put any hours on it.
That's why they didn't put any hours in
Well,
the
I mean,
It's unreasonable noise, it's unreasonable noise anytime, right?
right, and that could be the tack that we take. We eliminate the hours, and if you're upset that somebody's being loud at 8:30 PM and it's unreasonable noise, you can call it in.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I agree.
So that would be
That'd
an
be
option.
more in line with, the code that exists on the books at Samantha.
Yes.
If they aren't designating a quiet hours and it's just unreasonable, I think it would make sense to align with the code since we're referencing the code.
Yeah, I don't
agree.
have a problem with that. I just had the problem waiting till 11 o'clock,
Yeah.
to be able to.
Should we, I guess I'm open to feedback from the commission. Should we take this back to staff to study more, that we can make that change, that we can enforce that change? And then perhaps at a future time, we discuss it? Or within the motion, if we say we want to adopt it?
Like that. There we go.
I do. we believe it is within the purview of this commission to make a recommended change to those quiet hours. So we would just bring forth your recommendation, and if Zach's research shows otherwise, then he'll make that statement to the governing body at that time.
Okay.
Just make everybody go to bed at 10.
So this is going to go to the council after we
So we go back to
work
being
it
8
over.
years old again.
Yes,
Yeah.
any of the recommendations that you will send forward, we will provide to them for their next June meeting.
Okay. So for the commission, I would entertain a motion if we do want to change it to either change the hours or to strike the hours altogether and just say that it'll be adhere to the municipal code. I mean, I think if that's what people want to change, we can discuss either one of those.
I personally think that it would be better to just make it the unreasonable noise code, because you know what? Some people at 8 o'clock are just being, belligerent about things and doing things that don't.
Blasting inappropriate music, yeah.
Yeah, they're inappropriate and not conducive to the neighborhood. So I think if people are doing stuff that it's actually bothering your neighbor, we don't want to be held to a time constraint.
Okay.
I think it might be better if we just leave it as the unreasonable noise.
Okay. Any disagreement with Commissioner Michelina there? Seeing none, I have a proposal for the suggested language, which is basically after it says Section 38-31 will be enforced, we just put a period there and cut the rest of that sentence.
We'll second that.
I don't know if I actually can make a motion as the
Well,
chairman, sadly.
let's make a
If
motion
you
to get
can,
it
I
done.
move his motion. You want to second my
I'll
move?
second that.
I think Commissioner Williams suggested or made a motion to delete the language on number 8
Aye,
Um,
8.
that says, and the quiet hours are to be observed. So that, I think that is the motion and the second in front of us, Stephanie. Any discussion on the motion? Let's roll to a roll call then.
Commissioner Ball?
You're on mute now. Commissioner Ball.
Aye.
Thank you, sir.
Commissioner Byers?
Aye.
Commissioner Hall?
Aye.
Commissioner Michelina?
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson?
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby?
Aye.
Commissioner Williams?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great, okay. That's quiet hours. And then the other two that Commissioner Williams brought up were the definition of, or the language of short-term residential rentals are not commercial, but are strictly a residential use of property under the Village of Ruidoso Municipal Code. So I think that will you explain the concerns you have with are not commercial and strictly residential? What was the thought process and the concern you have with that language, Commissioner Williams?
I know that the Supreme Court of New Mexico has ruled against any restrictions so far. However, at some future time, this whole short-term rental situation is growing and changing the whole face of our village. My concern is that if we do this now and make these statements as definitions that we truly believe, it would be very difficult in the future, should we decide we really need to try something, to intervene in the numbers and in that aspect, maybe we can even increase the number of available rentals to our workforce.
Yeah,
We've dropped in numbers from 9,000 when I came here 32 years ago. Oh, my God. And now we have 7,000.
yeah,
However, we have 1,300 to 1,700 short-term rentals at any point in time
yeah. That has plateaued according to our last report that we got.
until summer.
Yeah. I don't know if this, and this is just my 2 cents, I don't know if it's within the best interest of the board, this board, the commission, to try to regulate that at this time.
I would just ask that it be removed. I don't understand the purpose of it if it's,
Well, so this language is here, and I'll lean on Zach and Sam to
Yeah.
give the context. My interpretation of why that's here is to allow it in residential zones and not make it a business, so you can do the renting out in the residential zone. So, and this is already existing language, so it would impact current state. It's not a net new language or changed language. So Sam, Zach, can you give some context on, under the section A, bullet point 2, where it says short-term rentals are not commercial, but strictly a residential use of property under the Village of Ruidoso Municipal Code?
I'm trying to remember what we discussed when we were originally drafting and pushing this into existence. The only thing that I can think of is that because it was short-term rentals were going to be allowed in R1 zones or in R zones, we maybe felt like we needed to clarify by definition that they're not commercial, so that nobody or a party would not have an argument going in to court that this is commercial property, even though, as Commissioner Williams pointed out, the Supreme Court on 2 or 3 cases has in New Mexico ruled that these are residential properties, or that the activity that's occurring within the buildings, the houses, is residential in nature. I don't know. I don't remember specifically why that was in there. And I'd ask Sam if she has any recollection.
No, I don't. I wasn't employed with the Village of Ruidoso at that time. Stephanie was, and she does recall the intent behind that.
So the previous discussions on that was because the structures are in the residential areas, they are built to residential building codes. Without the language that exists now, they would have to be modified to a commercial structure, which a lot of these existing homes would not qualify for. So it would prohibit them from being able to engage into the activity to benefit the village and accommodate the lodging accommodations as needed.
And yeah, thank you, Stephanie. That's helpful context. I think if we wanted to regulate them, we could do it a different way, and we'd still be perfectly within our ability to regulate these short-term rentals.
how?
Recommending a overall proposed change rather than just striking that one line. The ways that I've seen it done at other municipalities, hard cap on the number of units. I've seen it done located in a specific area, so shrinking the overlay zone to a particular part of town. I've seen it done with deed restrictions and incentivizing those deed restrictions. So there's a couple of other methods. And so my comment as a commissioner is, I don't know if removing that line would help us in the future dictate the short-term rentals, because I think we have plenty of tools in our arsenal to cap them, change them, reduce the number of them.
Nobody's been successful yet.
None of them have been proposed to my knowledge.
Right.
No hard and fast, like, hey, this is how we should reduce the number of short-term rentals or cap it, to my knowledge. I look to Zach, Sam, or anybody else that's.
Santa Fe and Taos file or no?
Taos does have a cap on theirs.
900 or something.
We've never taken forth to the council a maximum number of permits, though.
Come on, Jay, come on.
Yeah, I don't at this time think we should move forward with capping the number or recommending a cap for the commission. I think it's something we should look into, and I think we should come up with a comprehensive plan. I worry that if I say, and we make a recommendation, that it's like, we cap it at 500.
Yeah, it's arbitrary.
It's an arbitrary number. It creates a monopoly by the state, essentially. Not a monopoly by the state, that's the wrong language. An artificial limitation of the units available.
How about as a percentage of the population or something?
Yeah. I think just because and I don't want to shortchange the commission. I think maybe this should be taken as either a small group, like we work with the workforce housing, or some other group where we can really dive into this and talk about solutions, rather than us trying to brainstorm here, so.
As Mr. Ball, Commissioner Ball said on our last meeting last month, we talked about this
Yeah.
briefly, and it was to the point of, if we cap it, it probably won't eliminate people from still renting their houses. It just eliminates us from collecting lodger's tax. It eliminates us from the permit side of it, and allows us not to be able to identify the actual permitted houses that are there, so that fire and police know they're actually permitted homes. They're just going to go on the radar, and before you know it, they're going to tell their friends, and no one's going to permit their houses anymore, and they're just going to run wild.
The code officer will have so much fun.
We only have 3, so I mean, you know.
Exactly. So
We're taxing the system.
go ahead, Bart.
Well, from what I'm hearing, it's, there's a general consensus, it sounds like, that the short-term rentals is an issue that needs to be addressed, but the cat's out of the bag at the moment, and there's needs to be, investigation and research done as to how to.
Determine an appropriate. For the village's sake, I think it's.
Right, anyways, but that's,
Yeah.
it sounds like I say that there is consensus that there's something that needs to be looked at, but
Yeah.
It's something as we said, I don't think you want to necessarily put an artificial number without science behind it.
yeah,
You know,
there needs to be a lot of
You need
research
to,
done.
it's the same question I had about the hotel occupancy.
Yeah.
You know, when you don't have that information, you're favoring one over another without complete information, and you don't need to do that the governing body doesn't need to do that, and we don't need to do that as a commission either, so.
And so, hearing everybody's feedback, I think for today's scope, why don't we put a pin in that? I don't know if we have the ability to create action items as a commission and say, hey, as a commission, we're going to spearhead this investigation or policy review or whatever.
We could recommend the council do it.
We could recommend the council to do it. I think that is very valid. We could come up with a recommendation to council that's well within our scope. I'm looking to Sam, would it be better to kind of take that offline to explore the best way to investigate that?
I would include it in your all's direction to us with what we're bringing forward to council. So if you think that a steering committee should be composed to look at the short-term rental ordinance, we can take that recommendation to them and go from there.
Okay, so within this recommendation, not a separate point, okay.
Yeah.
So a whereas statement, we adopt this ordinance, and a whereas statement, the village council governing body of Ruidoso will investigate, explore, or commission
A study.
a
Is that
study
what you all
on
are
short-term
seeking?
rentals.
Impact and control.
Yeah, okay.
Well, and
I
that's,
do have one other thing.
Okay, so we do need
control may
to,
be futile.
Maybe, you never know.
so just,
So how do we need to break?
Yeah,
If you
sorry,
really
we
feel that
will-
way, we should
sorry,
just do away
Commissioner
with
Williams.
every law we have.
Commissioner Williams, so we do, let's put a bullet point on that. I think we do need we're saying that the village council should explore it. I think we need to come up with some language if we are to incorporate it with this recommendation. I don't know if we have any of that language available right now. Sam, do you have like boilerplate? We recommend the village governing body explores this?
Yeah, no, that's plenty. We'll let them know that you think that an analysis of the short-term rental market should be conducted to
Do you need
to
a
better
motion to
understand.
such?
I mean, that's,
It's impact.
A motion to amend this recommendation, I think, and then, unless we don't need a motion.
what was the first recommendation? I'm sorry. Besides the study of the short-term rental market, what was the first part? Or that's it?
I think it's the study of the short-term rental market to identify impact on local community, impact on full-time residents, and then if there is recommendations for change, specific recommendations for change in the current system.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, could we add one thing?
Yes, sir.
Impact on our code enforcement. I mean, our code
Absolutely.
enforcement is buried
Yes,
as
sir.
we speak.
Yep.
And this short-term rental has basically created a job for somebody.
Yep.
Yes.
We know, even though they've got management companies, they're not watching them. They're collecting the check, but they're not watching them. Everybody sitting on this board has experienced this at one time or the other. And it may be a 3-bedroom, but there'll be 10 cars in front of that 3-bedroom house.
Yeah.
We've all seen it.
Incorporating that into the statement, I think, from the board would be a good one.
Okay, we'll include that in the item discussion for the governing body.
Great, thank you. All right. Vicky, Commissioner Williams, one more for you. You're talking about business
This
licensing.
is a quickie, though. This
Yes.
is quick. On I-10, it's page 10 of 11. It says the 911 address for the property should be obviously posted so they can see it. It should absolutely, however, state the city and zip code on that address because that's a problem for EMS, right?
No, ma'am. The address is the physical number that needs to be published on the outside of the house that meets the lot numbering ordinance by dimension and color and size and location.
Where is it located?
It should be on the front of the house as dictated by the ordinance.
What if,
But you can't write the Ruidoso and your zip code on the front of your house.
It's talking about just the numbers that go posted on the front of the home. Typically, they don't have like the street name or the city, they just
it's
have like.
lot and so on and so forth? That, not the, well, I guess my concern is just that because if they should have an emergency in the home and need to call 911,
The property's address is located fully on their permit that's required to be displayed. So it does have the street and the zip code and all of that. So in the event they have to call, but not on the outside of the house per this.
right, I was gonna say, I don't know that they'd run out and start looking for that.
Yeah, they do have a
Son, it
permit
is armed, get
that is
off.
posted
Wait, I
inside
gotta
the
run
house.
outside to give you that. That's
No,
great,
that's
no,
part-
thank you.
I believe that's part of
Thank
the
you.
requirements, that they have to have that posted
Yeah.
inside the
Inside the
house,
door, right inside the door in the front,
So
yeah.
that they know that,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. I think that one's addressed. So
Yep, told you it was a quickie.
any other comments, changes, updates? We have the short-term residential rental overlay zone kind of open right now.
Yes. I'd like to go back to Vicky's question, or point about the Village of Ruidoso recommends a property owner to purchase short-term rental. That language should be shall purchase and provide a COI to the permit, so that's on file.
Could you give me a bullet and page number? Sorry.
Sorry, it's page 4 of 6 on the bold ones. It's under item H4, review of application and issuance of permit.
Okay. So for the folks on the online, did you hear the recommended changes by Commissioner Hall? That they shall that they shall have short-term rental insurance and provide certificate of insurance or COI to the village.
I just have a question for Zach. Is that something we can enforce? Because not all homes have home insurance.
Then they shouldn't be renting it out.
I'm,
Oh, even people.
they don't have a
I'll
mortgage.
pause. And Zach, do you mind addressing that question?
Yes, please.
I believe that you can require them to get some sort of insurance as part of their permit.
You have to have it to drive.
Yeah. And even if you're operating certain businesses, you have to have certain insurance. So I think it's,
And if you go into contract with the village, you have to have insurance approval.
and the permit is a contract with the village, right? Of sorts.
Yeah.
I think a permit is separate from a contract, but you still get to,
Yeah.
if you want to play ball, you got to do it with our rules.
Understood. Thank you, Zach. So
Is there a minimum requirement that we would have that they carry?
Not that I'm aware of. The contracts that I'm talking about are all, the amount of insurance is statutory. So
that's specific to this short-term rental.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that can vary. I think the first step is if you get the COIs and start to look at what their coverage is. Now, I came from a different background. When we had vendors dealing with our company, we had specifications for general liability, automobile insurance, in this case also workers' comp, and medical insurance. I don't know if we'd be in a position at this time to say, hey, this is exactly what you need to have. But I mean, I know what I had to have with a Fortune 500 company. And it's, like I said, it's not cheap, but it's cost of doing business. If you're going to do it, you need to do it because you don't want the village to get enjoined in something that could come back to the village as a permitting agency and be sued. Permitting agencies get sued all the time.
I would respectfully like to have time to research this and allow the manager to reach out to the municipal league and see if there would be any recommendation based on this process. Do you have
Do
something?
you have any comments?
I think we just need time to research.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commission.
Good afternoon.
I was just thinking about that. It's even like with even when we issue a business license or business registration, the business is not providing us any type of certificate of insurance. Some we would have to ask the New Mexico Municipal League just to see what the requirement, because if we issue a permit, we're not responsible for that location. It doesn't put the liability on the village. So it'd be something that we would have to look in. So I still don't know what coverage is, Zach. We do that with our vendors, but if we have an engineer or a contractor that works for the village, they have to provide a certificate of insurance. They have to name the village as additional insured on their certificate.
Right.
That's standard.
And the point of that is to protect it in case of property loss or injury. I'm not even sure what we're talking about, renter's insurance. What are we trying to protect?
Because I can't
think-
answer that.
Well,
I mean,
I think if you get into a situation, Zach, where, say, God forbid, something really bad happens on a short-term rental, and the renter winds up going after the owner for whatever reason, and they find that something is either amiss in the permit process or whatever, the village could be enjoined in that, say, a wrongful death lawsuit or something like that. I saw it all the time on the private sector with that. And the intent of this is to be able to give you coverage from the village and the citizens of the village of, okay, if you have to defend that lawsuit, there's a pool of money there, and it's not just going to come out of the village's pocket if they wind up being.
I think this just needs some more looking into because I think Ron's point is very well taken. If we give Schlotsky's or whatever restaurant a business license and somebody gets sick, does that mean that they've got claims against the village for giving them a business license?
and
Isn't that the same? Isn't that analogous?
yes, that's why, Zach, we call ours a business registration. It's not a license. We're not authorizing them to operate. We're just simply collecting the information of the company, their tax identification number for our files. We're not necessarily giving them a license to operate.
But I think any good plaintiff's attorney, I mean, if a person really had a claim against the village just because they got sick at a restaurant that's in the village and the village somehow is regulating it, there's no question that the NMED gives them permits to serve food. Is NMED now going to get sued every time? I don't know. Again, I
Get the
think we just need
lawyers
to.
any ideas?
Is this a
Chairman
solution?
Rigsby, Commissioner Hall, also was thinking, even you have a lot of management companies also that are handling the short-term rentals. They have their clients. They may be providing some sort of insurance,
Yeah.
being that they're managing. But again, going into, as Zach stated, even traditional lodging facilities, they get a business registration from the village. They don't provide us any type of certificate of insurance, the Super 8 or Elegante or any of the others, so.
Okay. I
It
think,
feels like a solution looking for a problem.
fair enough.
I've been in those problems.
I think
why I
Commissioner
brought it
Hall was hoping that the staff, if appropriate, would look into it, just to reach out.
Yes,
Um,
yes.
And right now, no recommendations in the change in language, but a request to look into that. Okay.
I see the point on both sides.
Yeah. Other changes to the language provided here? Okay. If none, I will,
Entertain a motion to adjourn?
I'll entertain a motion to either approve or disapprove the recommended changes as discussed today, with changes discussed. I'll entertain a motion that would involve that.
I would table it because pending research and such on the items we've talked about, further changes might be recommended, right, or not?
Certainly. I think the only thing that might
Table it, but
The only thing that might impact that would be the insurance. That's the only thing that we're getting more information on. And I don't know, given the primary purpose of today, if it would be fair to those that came and commented, to the village itself, to postpone this item when we're just worried about the insurance piece. Because the other parts are recommendations to the council that run independently of the language changes. Long-winded way to say, I don't think we should table it.
okay, Jacob.
So,
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll make a motion.
perfect.
We adopt the changes as discussed today in the short-term overlay jurisdictions as we've discussed today.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve recommendation to the village council for the changes discussed today in the Chapter 54 Land Use Article Zoning District 3 District Regulations, Section 54-106, Short-Term Residential Rental Overlay. I put some words in your mouth. And any opposition to the updated language that I put in there? If none, we can roll into a roll call vote.
Roll call votes.
Okay, Stephanie?
Commissioner Bach,
Aye.
Commissioner Byers,
Aye.
Commissioner Hall,
Aye.
Commissioner McLean,
Aye.
Commissioner Richardson,
Aye.
Commissioner Rigsby,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
motion carries.
Great. Thank you all. That was the last agenda item, so Commissioner Byers, you were ready to jump the gun on this one. Do you want to make a motion?
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay, great.
Second.
We got a motion and a second.
You don't need a roll call.
All
No, we don't
ayes.
need anybody opposed to that? All right.
Aye.
Bye, guys.
One opposed, Commissioner Baum. All right, passes. Thank you. Well, they're gone. Thank you all. Thank you all for being here today and giving your input.